Germany. And the others are just having a physical space. Uniqueness. Jim, it's hard to find a city in India for 25,000.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, that's a tiny city.
We may have to go up to 100,000.
Yeah, holy cow.
No, I think they went to they ended up going to the library board, which I urged them to do as the body that they're feuding with. Got it out, and maybe Pritzker just diffused the whole thing by
Saying
I don't think the events Friday were very bad either. Like there was more adults there than students at the end of the day, so I think things are starting to.
it's really interesting. My wife's a school nurse, and to talk to her about it, to talk to different points of view. But she had one that was really interesting. She had a parent whose child was coming in for an IEP, and the child, had some pre-existing conditions, and they asked whether the nurse was going to be masked during the meeting, and the nurse, for some reason, said no, we're not going to do it. And they pointed out the fact that their child in the last 5 years has had 5 open heart.
Oh, it has.
Yeah.
And it was like, well, that maybe
I don't think
changes
there's.
your point of view.
Yeah, it might.
If it was me and there wasn't COVID, I would have insisted.
Oh, I just. Yeah.
Yes. Crazy stuff.
I know, right?
It's 7 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and get this meeting started. Would everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, could I have a roll call, please?
Mayor Pulaski.
Here.
Trustee Berkshire. Absent. Trustee Delapenna.
Here.
Trustee Domke.
Here.
Trustee Lanisa.
Here.
Trustee Perkowski.
Here.
Trustee Trejo, also absent, but you have a quorum.
Thank you so much. We'll move to presentation of the prepared agenda. Do I have a motion to approve? Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Any abstentions? Seeing none, that motion carries. We'll now move to Village Board public comment. Anyone wishing to provide comment on a topic or an agenda item may address the Village Board during this time or public hearing segments. Madam Clerk, do we have any submitted in advance?
We do. We have one.
Thank you. Please go ahead and read.
This public comment is from Terry Erickson, and he writes to all residents of Roselle and the surrounding communities. My name is Terry Erickson, and my contact email will be provided at the end, so please be prepared to make a note of it. Since moving to Roselle, I have consistently informed city administration about issues relating to pedestrian access and safety. This includes having truly safe crosswalks with useful and enforced traffic control, safe and clear sidewalks, unblocked by vehicles, overhanging bushes, trees, construction, snow or snow plowed off parking lots, and increased public education and ordinance enforcement for pedestrian safety. Sadly, most of these requests have gone unresolved and without actual enforcement by city ordinances. The most recent of which is the path between the Maple Avenue parking lot and the back of Len's Ace Hardware, where snow was plowed from the parking lots onto the path. This was reported and, as usual, has not been cleared. I believe in the theory of if you see something, say something, but also understand the frustration of residents who say something and get no useful action. This must change. I am now a part of a group which has learned the hard way that we cannot trust our city government. I have been promised information from Roselle leaders, but have yet to receive anything, although they have started blocking my efforts to communicate with them by not returning phone calls or emails. So it seems that as residents, we must join together to solve these issues ourselves. I have now started working to get DuPage County and IDOT active in resolving some issues. But my voice alone is not enough. I have created petitions, which it seems that Roselle's administration does not want to help me promote, so that we can make it clear to the county and state that a large number of people support such actions. These include, for DuPage County, pedestrian signals at Granville and Roselle Road, the Turner Park access, improved pedestrian crosswalk and signal at Roselle Road and Irving Park Road, sidewalk, crosswalk, and signals at Medina Road between Crest and I-390. For IDOT, useful pedestrian walk light action at Maple and Irving Park Road, the Metra access. Pedestrian signals at Pinecroft and Irving Park Road, Metra and business access. And for U.S. Department of Transportation, useful pedestrian walk light action at Circle and Lake. To date, the Village of Roselle has taken no useful interest in organizing residents nor helping work with the county or state to improve the pedestrian access within our city limits. Recently, they have devoted a lot of effort into blocking the Canadian Pacific proposed merger. So now we know where their priority is, and sadly, it is not for the pedestrians of Roselle. If it was, similar efforts would have been applied for pedestrians. So please help me to reach out to the Regional Department of Transportation leaders with your signature on petitions and any additional comments that might assist pedestrians to have a safer and more fair access within our city. I cannot make promises to what or when things will be improved, but the more people who speak up increases the chances. Continuing to do nothing useful will never invoke improvement. Contact me at terry@protect-peds.com. I can answer your questions and direct you to petitions. Petition launch page is https://www.protect-peds.com/PG=Roselle.
Thank you. And I appreciate Mr. Erickson's comments. I think out of respect and fairness to staff, I know I've sat on a number of meetings and I know additional meetings happen with staff and Terry, and we make ourselves continually available to residents. We don't make it a policy to block or avoid residents when they have issues. And I know we've been engaging with all those parties. Unfortunately, time just takes time to make those kinds of changes. And in regards to the merger, that's something that there's a lot of federal deadlines that we're acting to meet in order to have a seat at the table. And I think a lot of the things that we're advocating for are for pedestrian safety in that regard. So I think it's important that we address all of those at the same time. So, but I appreciate his comments. Any other comments that were submitted in advance?
No others from that.
All right. Is there any member of the public here that wish to address the board at this time? Seeing none, we'll move on to officials and staff reports. Under Mayor, I'm really pleased to have a recognition proclamation to share. So we received some great news late last week, and so we want to kind of celebrate and join in on what's been going on in D12. So I'll ask Nia Kerr, do you want to come on up real quick? I want to read a proclamation for you, and then I'll come down to give it to you. So we have some great news to share with the community. And I'll read the recognition. So whereas educators are an important part of our community, preparing the next generation to lead, and whereas educators and students alike have been challenged to adapt to the new conditions during the COVID-19 pandemic, and whereas one of those educators, Nia Kerr, has been an exceptional Spanish teacher at Roselle School District 12, and whereas Nia Kerr has also made substantial contributions as a coordinator and teacher of the Success in Organization, Academics, and Responsibility, or SOAR, program at Roselle Middle School, and whereas Nia Kerr has provided targeted students with support to be successful in school and tackles each class with vibrant instruction, and whereas the Illinois State Board of Education annually recognizes a single outstanding early career educator from across the entire state, and whereas on February 10th, 2022, Nia Kerr was awarded the honor of Outstanding Early Career Educator for Illinois, recognizing her excellence in teaching. Now, therefore, I, David Pulaski, do declare and dedicate Friday, February 25th, 2020, in honor of Roselle School District 12 teacher Nia Kerr and educators throughout the village. Congratulations, Nia.
Can you do that in Spanish now, David?
Went to Roselle Middle School, had my first exposure to Spanish there. I'm really proud to see the school district excel, and I think it speaks to the volume of the quality of our community, but also the people that are in our community. So if you want to say anything, by all means, you have the floor. But we really appreciate you dedicating and helping our community be a better place.
Thank you.
I'll subtly say I made that date in advance, so that way hopefully the school can declare that also a theme day for all the kids to participate in. But you do with that, that's not our jurisdiction, so. Other than that, I don't have anything else under my report besides also a congratulations to Kerrigan Yarbrough, who was crowned our new Rose Ambassador for 2022. So it was a great relaunch of the program after the pandemic hiatus. So was happy to be there as an MC, and Lee served as a judge on the panel. So we had a good night Friday, kicking off our first official centennial event. So dozens more to come where that came from, but exciting stuff happening all around. Any village trustees have a report tonight? All right, village clerk.
Well, speaking of centennial activities, the Roselle Arts and Culture Foundation is the sponsor and the headlining the mosaic. We're having our first fundraiser for raise money towards mosaic, and it's going to be February 2nd at Noodles Delight for Dine and Donate for all of her takeout orders and in-house orders. She will donate 10% of the proceeds for the whole day to the organization to go towards the wall. So if you are a fan of Chinese or sushi, please visit Noodles Delight on it's Tuesday, February 22nd.
Great, thank you so much. Village attorney.
Mr. Mayor, agenda item 8E only requires a simple majority for approval.
Thank you so much. Village administrators report.
Thank you, David. I wanted to give the board an update on kind of the efforts that staff has been coordinating along with our neighboring community or cities and villages as it relates to the Canadian Pacific merger. 2 weeks from now, the board will have on their agenda an intergovernmental agreement that'll be asked to approve, kind of outlining and formalizing this relationship we've informally kind of created with our neighbors. So just a quick background, and we've had certainly information on our website and pushed this out to the community. But in October of 2021, Canadian Pacific Railway and Kansas City Southern Railway submitted an application with the Federal Surface Transportation Board authorizing CP to acquire Canadian Pacific to acquire Kansas City Southern. And collectively, we're kind of calling this the Canadian Pacific merger. Through that merger, they've identified environmental impacts that would be imposed on communities, and this proposed merger would establish kind of a one-of-its-kind end-to-end unified rail line from Canada to Mexico and kind of everywhere in between in America. We, the village, received notification in October from the Federal Surface Transportation Board, a notice of intent to prepare an environmental impact statement. We were notified because Canadian Pacific identified certain thresholds that the Surface Transportation Board has established would be exceeded in Roselle. And that would specifically be the number of additional freight trains that would come down the Milwaukee District West Metro line. And that really is from Elgin East is who comprises this coalition of communities. So it's Elgin, Bartlett, Hanover, Schaumburg, Roselle, Itasca, Wooddale, Bensonville, and DuPage County is partly collaborating with us, isn't officially part of our coalition yet. As part of the proposed merger, not only the additional, really it's the additional freight that would come through here. It's simply based on an estimate from Canadian Pacific looking out 3 years. So it could be more, certainly, and also that we would see 17 million more annual gross tons of freight train coming through our community based on the approximate 8 additional freight trains. So both the quantity of trains as well as that total weight of loaded kind of cars coming through Roselle triggered this environmental impact statement process that we were notified in late November of it. CP reached out to us, and the mayor and I had a quick meeting with them that they kind of informed us of what they were pursuing. We had less than a month to turn around and submit some information and a response to this to the Federal Surface Transportation Board. In effort to complete that request, we had to engage with an attorney from DC who has experience with railway law, as well as a local engineering firm to help us kind of come up with more of the technical components of our comments that we submitted. We've also, with our neighbors, have become a party of record to the process. So that basically entitles us to certain rights throughout this process that we will allow us to get access to more information and just keeps us a little closer to this process. So up until now, these communities have been meeting informally. Really, the village of Itasca has assumed all of the responsibility for entering into agreements with attorneys. And to date, we've retained an attorney, a railroad engineering expert, and a public affairs consulting company. To date, we spent about $40,000, which spread out across 8 communities is $5,000. The tenants of that IGA will articulate, all things being equal, an equal share in the total cost that each community will be responsible for. So currently then, so before the board next 2 weeks from now, you'll have that intergovernmental agreement that all communities are being asked to approve. Within the next 2 or 3 weeks, the Strategia Consulting, who's the public affairs company, is in the process of formulating our public kind of strategy for communicating this out. You will start to see more of that, hopefully, in the papers, in the media by the end of this month. We're working backwards from a deadline of February 28th, where our attorney will be submitting additional comments to the Surface Transportation Board. Part of those comments will be villages identifying potential mitigation efforts. So those things that we feel, if the merger were to happen, where right now the language in the IGA and the position of the coalition is we oppose this merger. We see no upside based on the proposed merger right now. There are no capital, there are no improvements being proposed along the metro line. So basically status quo with just more trains. Understanding that while we will continue to oppose this, we may, being the villages may, and the boards have to decide what is in the best interest of their community. But it's a little early in the process right now. So some of those comments that we will be submitting would be efforts to mitigate the adverse environmental impact of the train. So there's more traffic, more noise, more vibration, potentially more accidents, extended periods of emergency response based on our communities being kind of bifurcated by the rail line. So staff has worked to identify some of those mitigation efforts for Roselle. And specifically those that have been identified so far, and I'm still, I think that list will grow between now and the end of the month, would be a quiet zone, for example, would be a mitigating effort to mitigate some of the enhanced noise from the train in our downtown area. I've kind of put a dollar figure, a cost figure to what a quiet zone would be from Medina Road through Roselle Road. That would have the least impact on our community and surrounding businesses. Also, enhanced pedestrian safety is critical to this merger. With more trains at grade crossings, introduces more conflicts with not only cars, but pedestrians. So we're looking at some sort of overpass, underpass to be determined. We just know what, in our eyes, mitigation is safe, enhanced safety for pedestrians from the train station to our downtown. We don't know what it would look like. That's, in our opinion, up to the railway and their engineers to tell us what it would take, since that's kind of the space they operate in. But that is a large price tag that potentially is associated with that ped crossing, as well as then some general kind of noise mitigation, be it sound walls, be it windows, for businesses and other residences that may back up to the train tracks. We're still kind of evaluating other potential mitigation, could be underpasses, overpasses, relative to, roads going under the rail line or the rail line going over our roads and eliminating at-grade crossings. I'm not certain the upside of those would be very expensive and possibly change the entire landscape of our downtown, given the amount of land some of these things would take. But they certainly are things that other communities have identified and are looking at as mitigation for them. So the next deadline for us to submit comments is the end of February. The anticipation of this draft environmental impact statement is to come out this spring. There would be comment period during this spring on that environmental impact statement where the public and other parties could provide input on it. So our comments from the coalition will be filed by February 28th. The applicant then responds kind of in the month of April. That draft EIS, according to the Surface Transportation Board's timeline, comes out in the spring of this year, again, followed by public comment period and others kind of rebuttals and other responses. We expect final kind of briefs done in the summer of this year, with the ultimate final EIS being issued by the Surface Transportation Board in the fall, with a potential final decision made in the winter. So there is a lot of work between now and then. There's a lot of experts, there's potentially testimony and other things that could be public hearings, oral arguments are all things that could occur in front of the Surface Transportation Board that is based out of Washington, DC. So that's why we've hired some experts in the railway space to help us out in DC, but also to help the coalition kind of put forth its strongest case against the current opposition to the merger. My final piece is much for some of you board members who are here for the ComEd. I think I will also have a resolution for that proposed high transmission project. You authorize the village administrator to spend up to $100,000 in kind of all efforts to oppose, in that case, the ComEd project. We were the kind of the clearinghouse of all expenses, where now Itasca is, and will be more of just invoice from them, our share. But I think I would like to also propose that the board consider that at the next meeting so that those invoices and other things can be processed. I've incurred some costs unilaterally outside of the coalition with our engineering company and some other things that may also add to the overall kind of defense fund, if you will, for this project. So there'll be an IGA in front of the board in 2 weeks, as well as that resolution, which I think will certainly communicate loudly to the community as well as to CP that we're aligned with our neighbors in opposition to this, and we'll do what we think is in the community's best interest to put up our best fight possible. With that, I would be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Jason? Wayne?
Yeah, it's real early, so what could we even ask for, because you got all this data yet to collect? With the ComEd as an idea, we always seek another route. Is there no other route this railroad can take other than go through heavily populated areas? That's one thing. You may not be able to answer these.
We're evaluating it. Yep.
You know?
Exactly like ComEd, where we hired an expert to help us identify alternative routes for that high transmission. We are doing the same thing with this.
And the other thing, what impact does that have insurance wise on the businesses that are adjacent, or the residents adjacent to the tracks? Do their liability insurance goes up, or their property insurance goes up because many more trains are going by? So, those are just things to look for when you're doing your research.
Okay, I'm not familiar with that, but I'll look into the insurance side of it.
Any other questions for Jason at this time? I think just in closing, just like we did with the O'Hare expansion, as we did with ComEd, we are united with our neighbors in this, and I think we're not going it alone. We're going in together as a block, and I think the only thing that's different in this case is this is across state lines, and so we are a group in Illinois that's near a very large metropolitan area, but there are, I would say, dozens on the safe side, close to maybe hundreds of communities that will be impacted by this merger. So we're not alone in this fight at all. So hopefully we can find a good solution for us all. So thank you, Jason, for all your work that you've spent on this. Chamber of Commerce liaison. You snuck on the agenda, but we'll honor it. What's going on?
I haven't been to a meeting this year, David.
All right, well, there we go. That's our report. We'll move to unfinished business, the consent agenda. All items listed on the consent agenda are considered to be routine, procedural, informational, self-explanatory, or non-controversial in nature and will be enacted in one motion. There will be no discussion of these items. Tonight, we have presentation and approval of the village board meetings from January 24th, 2020, February 4th, 2022, and approval of village board meeting minutes from February 5th, 2022. We also have an ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances, Village of Roselle, Illinois, limitation on the number of licenses covering the sale of alcoholic liquors in the Village of Roselle by decreasing the number of Class J licenses from 5 to 4 for Hannah's Bistro, and then pass an ordinance to declare surplus certain properties, personal properties of the Village of Roselle. Do I have a motion?
So moved. I'll second that.
Thank you. Since we have an ordinance, we'll do a roll call vote.
Trustee Delapenna.
Aye.
Trustee Domke.
Aye.
Trustee Lanisa.
Aye.
And Trustee Pelkey.
Aye.
That motion carries. We'll now move on to our regular agenda. We have nothing under community development, administration, fire, or police, but without a doubt, public works. Trustee Domke.
Of course. So I'd like to make a motion to adopt a resolution authorizing the execution of a contract with Garland DBS Incorporated for the roof replacement of this village hall in the amount of $223,422 through the master intergovernmental cooperative purchasing agreement.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 All those, oh, roll call. I apologize. Roll call.
Trustee Domke.
Aye.
Trustee Lanisa.
Aye.
Trustee Pelkey.
Aye.
Trustee Delapenna.
Aye. Notice how we got that in before the bills list.
Yeah, exactly right. That motion carries. We'll now move to finance. Trustee Lanisa.
Okay, I would like to make a motion to approve the accounts payable list for February 14th, 2022 in the amount of $2,046,338.65.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying, oh, roll call again? Okay. Roll call.
Trustee Lanisa.
Aye.
Trustee Domke.
Aye.
Trustee Delapenna.
Aye.
Trustee Burkowski.
Aye.
All right, that motion carries. And then we'll move on to the next one.
I would like to make a motion to pass an ordinance amending the fiscal year 2021 budget for the general fund, Irving Park Road Business District Fund, the General Capital Projects Fund, the Water Sewer Extension Fund, the Water Sewer Operating Fund, the Parking Lot Operating Fund, and Information Technology Fund.
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion? I know this one needs a roll call. This is an ordinance, so.
Trustee Lanisa.
Aye.
Trustee Domke.
Aye.
Trustee Burkowski.
Aye.
Trustee Delapenna.
Aye.
That motion carries. We have no new business tonight, so we've come upon public comment again. Or actually, I lied. We do have new business, but public comment first. Is there any member of the public that'd like to make a comment at this time? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and move on to our first item, the ARPA COVID Relief Grant Funding Program. Matt?
Thank you. All right. So during the most recent budget approval process, the board approved $100,000 of the ARPA fund to be used to assist local businesses through relief grants. Staff has prepared two categories of grants for the board to consider. The COVID-19 Business Reimbursement Grant and the Business Resiliency Grant. Both grants follow similar eligibility and application requirements as the existing village's TIF grants. Some of these requirements include that businesses be in good standing with the village. They may not be a home-based business. They must have a current business license, and no funding may be used for previously reimbursed expenses. A full list is provided in the attached program guide. The COVID-19 Business Reimbursement Grant is intended to reimburse businesses for funds already spent to maintain business activity during the pandemic. These expenses must have been incurred between March 1st, 2019 and December 31st, 2021 to be eligible for reimbursement. Some eligible expenses include costs to upgrade HVAC and air quality improvements, technology expenses, and outdoor seating expenses such as tent and furniture rental. A more detailed list can be found in the attached program guide. The Business Resiliency Grant is intended for funding future projects that would minimize economic loss and provide permanent solutions in response to the pandemic. Some eligible expenses include costs for physical access, costs to improve physical access, costs to bring businesses into code compliance, upgrade to water and sewer systems, and technology expenses. A more detailed list is in the program guide. Both grants may fund up to 50% of project costs. A minimum grant amount shall be $1,000 and a maximum amount $10,000. Since this is a new program, interest and participation in these grants is unknown. It is recommended that the board set an end date for these grants in order to encourage timely application of these funds. If the board concurs with the two grants, staff will initiate a marketing campaign and come back to the board with a resolution to formally adopt these grant programs. I now turn it over to the board for questions. It is.
Nice, in person versus on.
All right. Does the board have any questions for Matt at this time?
One
Wait,
question.
oh, sorry, good, Tom.
Is the March 1st, 2019, is that the correct date? Are we going on 3 years now, or is it 2 years? That'd have been March 1st, 2020?
No, that was the start of the pandemic.
Oh,
Good call.
Right.
Wayne?
We have a couple merchants that have projects that are being stymied because of lack of money. Does that qualify for them to put in a sprinkler system or something that could move them along in their getting their business up and running? I mean, it does have a line item on here suggesting that they could apply under those pretenses. We have another business that's on Central that's having a little trouble getting everything fired up. It's not necessarily related to COVID, but it is, because maybe that's why they don't have the funds, you know? So I would assume that might qualify them. And also, if they're in a TIF district, is there any complications with TIF? Would they not qualify for a TIF, some TIF assistance if they're already getting this?
So we would point an applicant that's within a TIF district towards our TIF programs to see if one of those grants would apply for what they're looking for. If their expense doesn't qualify for a TIF grant, then we could use the ARPA funds. To answer your first question, these funds could be used to upgrade sprinkler systems and things like that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Matt? I assume that we can, obviously, if the board feels that based on the applications we receive, we can amend our budget to fund this further, should we have the demand like we've seen in the TIF funds, correct?
Correct.
Good thing, really good.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think this is a great solution. We wanted to get something out to non-TIF businesses because there's a lot more flexibility in TIF funds. And I think this is a good way for us to be a little bit more broad sweeping in our support of businesses and hopefully helping them continue to roar back this year. So
When you claim home business, that would be somebody that's working out of their house or something?
correct. We should only have a couple of those, but they do exist.
But if it's a commercial site and they're working out of it as a family business, that's all right.
Yep, it's just, think about like architects, attorneys, accountants who might work out of their home that would not qualify for a grant. I don't think we discourage others, but that doesn't mean that they don't happen to be out there. So what's allowed by code and what people do are two very different things. So does the board feel comfortable then having this on a future agenda to approve? All right, and we'll circle back with Lee and Bruce as well to make sure that they're comfortable so there's no concerns there. So thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
Next, we have I don't even. Software purchase, we'll just go with that, Matt. Okay, TIF IQ, okay, that doesn't naturally read off the page like that to me, I'm like,
Is that one of the guys in the halftime show?
ECQ, I don't know, yeah, I'm just like,
Yeah.
TIF IQ, thank you, software purchase.
Yes. During the recent strategic planning meeting, the board identified a priority for staff to find technology solutions to increase operational efficiencies, manage and track performance, and increase the customer experience. In this effort, staff identified TIF IQ, a TIF reporting, application, and tracking software by CivicServe, as a potential solution to the village's technology needs. New legislation requires that all TIF projects annually report the estimated numbers of jobs created, rates of return, and all increment promised and actualized. TIF IQ would make it easier for staff to complete the required annual reporting forms by tracking the required data for each TIF project. Additionally, TIF IQ streamlines the management of TIF grants and programs by capturing project data, automating compliance reporting, and applying intelligence to assist staff in evaluating proposed projects. Along with specific TIF uses, TIF IQ provides included features that can be utilized throughout the village for the standardization of applications and forms, compliance reporting, and process optimization. You can find a list of this software's core capabilities and additional uses in the staff memo and attached documents. Since TIF IQ is used to manage TIF programs, it is an eligible expense under the TIF Act, meaning the village can fund this purchase utilizing available TIF funds. While researching this project, staff reached out to Peoria and Pekin for feedback on their experience as customers of CivicServe. Peoria has utilized CivicServe to help process over $1.2 million in COVID relief grants. Peoria staff stated that the rapid distribution and ability to manage these grants was greatly aided by CivicServe's products and services. Peoria also utilizes CivicServe software for loan applications, internal document management, and other uses as mentioned above through a customized hosted web portal called the Business One-Stop Shop, aka the BOSS. An example of what the village's public-facing application portal will look like is in the attached documents. Both Peoria and Pekin staff noted that CivicServe has been a responsive and good working partner. The proposed annual cost for TIF IQ is $9,500. CivicServe is offering the village additional benefits as an early adopter of TIF IQ, which include the discounted annual fee of $9,500 versus their traditional fee of $15,000. It would also lock in this discounted fee through 2026 and include their grant management module at no additional fee and provide free training for any new modules. A full list of benefits can be found in the staff memo. If this purchase is approved, Civic Plus will provide a dedicated implementation team to build out the village's entire TIF IQ platform. This build out includes, but is not limited to, the creation and installation of all requested digital applications and forms, integration with GIS, ingestion of all current and active redevelopment agreements, and staff training. CivicServe would have the TIF IQ platform up and running within 30 days of the kickoff meeting with the village. Although this is not a budgeted item, there are enough available funds in the village's 3 TIF districts to make this purchase. Any additional uses of this technology would follow the necessary accounting and cost allocation processes. The immediate utilization of this technology would be for TIF programs and grant management. Other departmental uses would be applied gradually as the staff identifies the best additional uses for this technology. I now turn it over to the board for questions.
Any questions for Matt?
Why do not have one, right? There's only 2 villages that you use as a reference. Is that because they're not very prevalent in Illinois? I mean, they started up in 2016. They're kind of a newbie on the block. Is that what?
Yeah, they're a relatively small software group right now and have worked primarily with Peoria and are working on releasing their product with Pekin as we speak.
So just what made you choose this one as opposed to some of the others that might be on the market?
Definitely affordability is a factor. Also, their team, we've heard multiple accounts that they are very responsive, unlike larger software firms where, their customer service isn't as responsive. Another reason is that they work directly with staff through the build out process. So they're really building the platform versus handing us a product where the staff has to build it.
And their training would involve a session or so with some employees, and then they would come and train other employees, or would our employees train each other?
Their training staff would train us in person. And I believe that we can do that with all users. So there'd be primary users.
I have one last question on that. You mentioned something about using TIF funds for a TIF functionality. But if you were to use it in other areas of the village, do we then have to, we can't call it a TIF function and we got to pay something else, or how does that work out?
Yes, yeah. So initially we'll be using this 100% for TIF management. And while we find additional uses for it, we would have to allocate funds appropriately to reflect those uses.
To this corporation? Or we're at 9,500. You just have to divide the 9,500 differently? Okay,
Correct.
that's good. Thank you.
Any other questions? Board feel comfortable with this being approved and moving forward with it?
To me.
I think it should hit all the right points, like Matt said, as far as usability, but also I think the data that we get on the back end, sometimes it's harder. People have a lot of questions and they're skeptical of TIF districts, rightfully or unrightfully so. And now we can actually have some harder numbers to put to it instead of having to do a lot of deep digging to answer some of these questions. So appreciate you bringing this solution. Thank you.
Thank you.
Two in one night. Look at that.
Now you have to have the answers immediately, okay?
Work on that.
We got 3 years to do that, Wayne. 3 years.
Oh, 3 years.
3-year plan. Any other business that the board has for discussion only at this time? If not, I'd ask for a motion to convene an executive session.
So moved.
Purpose of the executive session is to discuss closed session minutes, the appointment of legal counsel, and the potential acquisition of real property. No final actions anticipated.
Can I have a roll call, please?
Trustee Bill Penna.
Aye.
Lanisa.
Aye.
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 All right, that motion
May
carries.
have missed something.
And so are we adjourning this meeting just so we can stop the Zoom meeting since you're not coming back to take action, or?
Oh, yeah, we could do that. Is that the preferred path with Zoom?
Yeah, from
Do that now. Just,
Okay.
you can make the motion after the motion.
Is there a motion to adjourn our regular session?
Motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Any abstentions? And we'll adjourn